Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Wherever you are, whatever time of day it is by you, it's great to have you with us. My name is Nim. I'm the technical evangelist here at Kintone. I'm located in the city of Berkeley, the shining city of Berkeley, California, on the West Coast. I'm joined by my colleagues Genji and Will.
Hello.
In
Yeah.
Tokyo, Japan, and the inimitable Christine. I'm really glad to see some new faces, some old faces. We are going to talk about React. We're going to talk about web databases and hooking them all up. If this is your first time playing with React, buckle up. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and download the code and the slides that are at the following link over here. bit.ly/KDP_React. Make sure that it's case sensitive. If you have not already done so, very, very important, make sure you sign up for a Kintone developer account. And that's gonna let us hook you up with a free Kintone subdomain for you to play in. So first you'll sign up for that developer account, and then second, you're gonna go ahead and create your subdomain. Okay, so I was telling you about downloading the zip file. So if you've gone ahead and to bit.ly/KDP_React, that's the place where you can download the zip file. It says download zip. So Sunanda, this one's for you and for anybody else who has these questions. This is where you'll be able to download the zip file of all of these files. And then if you have not already done so, when you sign up for a developer account, you'll go to bit.ly/KDP_signup. Make sure you're using Chrome and Firefox. Do not use Safari, and make sure that you accept cookies so we can hook you up with this. And then the Kintone subdomain, once you've created a developer license, you'll be able to get access to a free Kintone subdomain. You'll need to name your subdomain. You can name it whatever you'd like, as long as it's got lowercase numbers and hyphens in it and no other special characters. So I've already introduced myself. My name is Nim. I am a technical evangelist here at Kintone. I have a very cool career story that brought me to coding through sales and sales engineering, and then I managed a sales engineering team. And now one of the things that I do is I get to talk to folks like you about coding and about tools like Kintone that can help you improve your business operations. If you're a business person with a team, if you're not a business person with a team, how you can expand your coding knowledge or create some really unique and interesting consulting opportunities from a software engineering perspective. My colleagues Will and Genji are developer advocates in the Kintone developer program. They are joining us all the way from Tokyo, Japan. Guys, I just really appreciate you being up so early in the morning. And by early, I mean, what is it, like 9 a.m. by you?
Oh, it's 10 o'clock. It's too early.
Oh,
Yeah,
too early.
We do our best. We do our
best. Well, thanks for joining us in your tomorrow and our today. Folks, today we're going to get data from a web database. We are going to create a front-end web application using React. It'll hook into a back-end server that's been spun up with Express, and it's going to we're going to have that client interact with that server to pull data from a web server, and then render that. I'm sorry, from a web service from Kintone acting as a database. Which will then render the data on your front end. And then what we're going to make today is going to be very, very pretty. It's going to look a little bit like this. It's going to be the rendered response of a JSON that we've gotten from our web service. And so that's what today's agenda is going to be. First, we're going to start that React project. We'll render an API response. We'll start an Express server. And then we will call a web database. We'll get data from Kintone. We'll output it into React. And we'll talk a little bit about why we're starting that Express server, because we will encounter CORS errors. And so we're going to go over setting up of the Express server. Will wrote up a wonderful tutorial going over what we will be doing today. I highly recommend you use it to follow along, especially if you're anywhere between a 1 and a 7 on that number that you just dropped. Go ahead and spin this up. It's bit.ly/react-rest.devto. And so the four main concepts that we're going to be touching on today are React, the REST API, CORS errors, and the Express server. So what is React? React is a JavaScript library. It's a framework for building user interfaces. It makes it easy to think about what you're coding and what the relationships are between what you're coding and what's getting output on the screen. And the way that it does that is by giving you like what we call syntactic sugar, just like a sort of a nice way to make HTML like elements inside of your JavaScript, which then get interpreted as HTML, interpreted and essentially get injected as HTML. Get injected into your HTML. Another nice thing about React is that it only updates what changes. So it makes it more performant. It makes it faster, that it's only rendering the deltas. It renders the differences of the things that have changed once your store of data has changed. What's a REST API? REST API stands for Representational State Transfer Application Programming Interface. Oh boy, that's a lot. All we need to know is an API is a toaster. An example of an API is a toaster. There are specific buttons and levers and dials on that toaster that you, as a user of that toaster, are interacting with. If you want to toast bread, you don't ever rip open the plastic and jam your food into the heating element, into the metal. You've got specific interface points which have been designed for you to interact with the product, and then you've got stuff that exists behind the scenes that you are essentially sheltered from, that lets the product do what it's supposed to do when it exposes its endpoints to you. So you can imagine that's what an API is, only from a programming perspective. And a REST is simply like a particular protocol for interacting with APIs in a way that is allows each interaction with the API to be kind of separate and complete in and of itself, without requiring relationships to previous API interactions, API calls. Now, the issue with REST APIs is that when you make REST API calls directly from the browser, in other words, when you are executing client-side code, it can often result in what are called CORS errors, which stands for cross-origin resource sharing. Cross-origin resource sharing errors require us, and as a client, to interact with a server to make calls on our behalf, so that we can play by safe rules when we're surfing on the internet. So we're going to be creating a server as a way to avoid those CORS errors when we're making API calls, and we'll be using Express to spin up a server. It's a back-end web application framework for Node, and you can use it to make API calls. It's pretty simple, and so it's a useful tool for us today. So, folks, if you haven't already, make sure that you've got the right Node and NPM versions. You want to make sure that your Node version is over 10.16 and your NPM version is over 5.6. And if you need to, you can, if you're on Mac OS, you can brew install Node using Homebrew. If you're on Windows, you'll use Chocolatey. And then set up a React app. So once you've installed once you've installed Node, we can use it to begin to import libraries into our project. So first we need to create our project. So you're going to create a My Project folder, and then you will use the command npx to create the command npx, and then create React app, which tells us we're going to install the create React app library into a new folder called front end, and then we're going to go and open that folder and play with it in Visual Studio Code. So if you have not done so already, go ahead and do that right now. It may take you some time for that create React app to work. So you can go ahead and push the button on that now and buckle up. And then once you're inside front end, that folder, that create React app library, what it does is it's setting us up with boilerplate for a React app. What we're going to do is we're going to run a command called npm start in the terminal, and what that'll do is it'll open up a tab in a browser that'll allow us to basically see changes that we're making on the fly, like a development server essentially, and it'll hook into that My Project that we're seeing over here in VS Code. So you'll ultimately have 2 or 3 windows open. One is, well, in addition to Zoom, you'll have VS Code. You'll have this tab in your browser, and you'll have terminal, which you can also do inside of VS Code. But if you don't, it'll be a separate window in your terminal where you'll npm start. And then we're going to need to do some cleanup. So there's a whole bunch of files to delete. Anything that starts with app, so app.css, app.js, app.test.js, index.css, logo.svg. Let me go ahead and we'll show you. We'll delete all this stuff right now. And we're going to move this to trash. And we're going to move these bad boys to trash as well. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to edit index.js, which we'll come back to momentarily. So right now, your directory structure probably looks like this. You've got a My Project folder. You've got a front end folder, a subdirectory underneath My Project, and then that has a bunch of folders in it. You're going to go inside of public. You should see index.html, and you'll have index.js, which is inside of the source folder. So the implication here is that if you drill down into some folders, you'll see index.html inside of public, and inside of source will be inside of index.js. Ultimately, our directory structure is going to look like this. We're going to add a backend folder later where we will be handling the server-side behavior. Okay, we're going to get started with some live coding. And what we want to do over here from index.js is we're going to get rid of a lot of this boilerplate. Okay. Ultimately, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to present some element that we can see in that development server that we're running. And so what we want to do is, first of all, again, get rid of all of the unnecessary boilerplate. So these references to to files we deleted, we can get rid of them. And then we've got this render function. So we're going to want to keep this render function and make some changes over here. And we're going to want to get rid of this. Okay. So let's start real simple. We're going to want to present an element. So what we can do is we can create this, oops, there we go. And let's grab it over here. We're going to want to present an element. And so this isn't JavaScript, right? Basically, something needs to come along and interpret this syntactic sugar into sensible JavaScript. And that's what this React DOM render function does. We need to have it render what's called JSX. And then we need to tell it where it's going to render that. And so we're actually looking for an element called root, which should be in our index.html. In fact, if we look for it, here we go, div ID root. This is where all of our JavaScript is going to hook into. So if we run the if we run the development app, sorry, the development server, we'll go ahead and we'll save these files. And let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, target container, edit target container is not a DOM element. Okay, boys, looks like we're going to be debugging on the fly over here. Import React. And let me show you what this development server looks like at the moment. Here we go. Genji, Will, are you guys getting this error?
Oh, sorry, I was debugging something else.
Can we see the code real fast?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and check that out. So here we go. We're going to render my element. We're going to do it at root.
Do you have a, sorry, I'm coming in. Do you have an element?
The issue, okay, got it. The issue is that we're getting an element by ID. So I believe we just need root over here.
Yeah, you don't need the pound.
There we go. Yeah. That was it. So that's the difference between document.query selector and get element by ID. Thanks, Vijay. Okay, so this is what we should be seeing. So what we're going to want to do next is, so we've got this relationship between the code that we're writing and the rendering that's being presented on the screen. So what we're going to do next is we're going to make an API call. We're going to get down and dirty with that and begin to see what happens when we get data and then present it. So the first place we're going to make that API call to is a REST endpoint from a place called random user.me. We're going to make that API call over there. And then we want to create the REST API function. And our response is going to be, we're going to fetch that endpoint and, excuse me, folks. And we're going to get the JSON response. Response dot JSON, so we can stringify it, and then what we want to do is we want to log JSON response. And then we'll call REST API. So we'll go ahead and we'll save. And let's see what we've got over here. So I'll go ahead and I'll refresh the page, and you'll see we've got a console log over here. We've got this array of information that we've received from random user API. This random user, Justin Campbell, gender ID male, ID, blah, 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 all of this random information. So what we want to do next is render it. And interestingly enough, every time that we refresh this browser, we're going to get a new random user. As you can see, here we go, Annette Peach. All right. So what we want to do now is we want to begin to render that data with React. And so what we're going to do is we're going to modify this call REST API function a little bit. Let's return a new React element. It's going to be a stringified version of, oh, there we go, JSON response. So let's see what happens when we do that.
Would you be awaiting on the call to go back to the code? You've got an await on response.json, is that correct? Because you've already awaited on the fetch.
Yeah, let me double check over here. Yeah, we don't need
Should
this.
be okay.
Yeah, because I don't think that JSON returns a promise or anything, right?
You're right. Good catch. Thank you. What I'm looking for here, so in theory, we should get the REST API response and render it into the root element, but I'm actually expecting an error over here. There you go. Promise is pending. Oh, no. JSON. Let's go ahead and give this a try. So what I'm expecting over here. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Could you just go back to the code for a minute? So in the React render line 18, you're calling just the element, and you should be calling the function.
Yes. So what I'm expecting over here is actually to create an error. The reason being that we are when we make an API call that and we push that information into React, React will update parts of itself to include that information. But the issue is that the objects are not valid as a React child. So basically, React is interpreting this as a promise, and we need it as an array. And so it immediately returns a promise object, but it goes off and then it makes another REST API call. But it takes time. And so React needs something in the meantime to use as a placeholder while it's awaiting the outcome of the promise. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to begin interacting with React's state. So what do I mean by state? What I mean is like a place where we're holding an initial. It's sort of like our database of record, so to speak. It's our source of truth for what the data is in React, and we need that state starts with an initial value. And then it updates over time, and React looks to that state to tell it what it should be rendering and where. And so we're going to use React hooks. We're going to use two hooks, the use state hook and the use effect hook. And so the use state hook will allow us to use these special state variables that we can use to render into the React UI. And the use effect hooks will allow us to run functions after the rendering is finished. So it's sort of brings an order to the
really good turnout tonight.
Flow. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to import those hooks, use state and use effect from React. We will keep this REST API endpoint. We can actually get rid of my element. We're not using it anymore. And then let's have a look at call REST API, if there are any changes we want over here. What we're going to do, we're going to get rid of all of this. We're just going to simply return a stringified version of that JSON response. And then what we want to do is we want to have a separate function called render result. And what this is going to do is we're going to introduce all of the rendering of the, we're going to introduce an element called render result, the render result element. Which will basically handle the rendering. Handle the interactions between the state and the effects, so that we can make that API call, get the data, and render the data, and then and have something to present while we're waiting. And make sure that the functions are executed in an order where we don't like get into a refresh loop. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up the use state hook. And I'm going to use some JavaScript, some ES6 notation over here. What this is telling me is that I've got like a 2-item array. The first item is going to be the API response, and the second is going to be set API response, and that 2-item array is going to correspond to, output of this function called use state. Use state is a function that takes in one parameter. In this case, it's a string, and this string, it represents the initial value of the state. And then that use state function is going to output a 2-item array, which will map to this array of API response being the first item and set API response being the second item. And then the next thing that we're going to do in this function is we're going to set the use effect hook. Oops. So what we're doing is that REST API function that we were executing on line 21, we're going to fold it in over here. And it's, of course, going to return a promise. What we want to do is wait until we receive the results. And then what we're going to do with that promise, set API response result. There we go. Let's put it over here. There we go. So the response that we get from calling the REST API, we're going to push it into set API response into the state. And then the next thing that we're going to do is handle the rendering once that state has been updated. So what will we render exactly? Well, there we go. Come on. What are we going to render exactly? We're going to render some simple HTML, and this is the place where React knows to render the API response. Okay. Okay, great. Any questions in the chat? Looks like we handled the query selector. Looks like we handled questions about index.js being treated as JSX. VJ talked about Webpack. That's working behind the scenes to interpret this JS file as a to interpret this JSX code as standard JavaScript that's handling behind the scenes. What we're going to do now is, can you show the render result method? Sure. Here you go, Charles. So render result handles the initial value of the state. It handles changing the state with the use effect hook, which calls the REST API and then pushes the result into set API response, and then gives instructions on how to render API response. It's going to look like this. So what we'll see as a result is, and Brittany's asking, are you now only call REST API function within react.dom.render? Brittany, I want to make sure that I'm following the question. So we initially had a call REST API function. I believe it was on line 21. And we got rid of it. We moved that call REST API function into this use effect hook. How to write cleanup in use effect. What do you mean by how to write cleanup in use effect? And so, Brittany, this is the only place where we're calling the REST API. It's happening inside of the use effect hook. React.dom.render. Well, this render function, basically, this allows React to understand what is it that we want to render and where are we going to put it. We've created this render result JSX element, and we've associated it with this render result function, which is everything that's happening over here. Okay. So when we refresh the page, thanks, VJ. Audio sounds very far away. Okay. And let's see what we've got over here. All right, here we go. So it's now loading. So this is exactly what we were expecting. We have this h1 of React, and then we've got that initial state now loading. It waits for the promise to be fulfilled, and then it renders the result of that promise over here in some very pretty JSON. Okay, now what we can do is we can keep refreshing the page and getting new results. And so what are we going to do next? So we're going to talk about CORS errors. So one of the nice things about using this random user API is that it allowed us to make client-side requests to their server. But not every REST API gives us that ability. So we're going to replace this random user API with a different. What we see over here in the console is this error. Access to fetch at this from origin this has been from origin that has been blocked by CORS policy. No access control allow origin header is present on the requested resource. And so basically what's happening is I am using this local host server, and I'm executing client-side code over here, and I'm then reaching elsewhere to get data. Sort of like if I were on google.com and there were some kind of code that was executed on my browser, maybe some malicious code that was running. Catching a lot of breathing. Okay, thanks, Richard. See photo. Let me know if this is better, okay? Can I just get a quick thumbs up? How's the audio? Raise your hand if the audio is good. Okay. Better now. Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I'm getting a lesson in where to put my mic up. Terrific. Thanks, everybody. Very, very helpful. So what's happening over here is if I'm on google.com, I typically don't want code while I'm on google.com to run from my browser that'll take me to steal your important information.com. So the internet has evolved these protection mechanisms to make sure that there's like an orderly exchange of information to the places that I as a client am expecting and that they as a server are expecting. So what we need to do to get these requested resources is we need to have a server basically make the call on our behalf. We need to have we need to basically hand over our request to the server that we're currently on, which will then make an API call to whatever other endpoint that we wanted to access, retrieve that or receive that information, and then give it back to the client to do something with. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the express library as a way to spin up a lightweight server, so that we can avoid these CORS errors. All right. So if you have not done so already, go ahead and create a folder in your My Project folder and call it Backend. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that backend folder, and we're going to npm initialize. So you'll type in npm init, and then you're going to go to you're going to install a bunch of libraries. So let me show you what that'll look like. Here we go. So what we've done is we created the backend folder. Then inside of the backend folder, we ran npm init, And you can just hit enter, 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 enter until all this is done. This is going to create a package.json file, which we don't need to worry about at the moment. And then once we do that, we're going to run npm install, and we're going to install npm install express, node-fetch, and cores. And then we're going to create a file to work on called Server.JS. We can create the file in the terminal or in VS Code or wherever you'd like, Server.js. And ultimately, this will bring us back to this backend folder in VS Code where we've got Server.js hanging out. All right. So what are we doing over here? Well, we're going to require the express module. We're going to want that. We're going to want the cores module. We're going to want the fetch module. And then when we're running the server, we need to establish what port the server will run on. And then we've got some express boilerplate over here, which we'll use to initialize the express server and handle the cross-origin resource sharing information. Localhost.3000. And we're going to want to work with that. We're going to want to make that call to that xkcd server that we were not able to make before. Okay. So from here, we've got two other functions that we want to run. We want to actually make the GET request, and then we want to have the express server be ready, listening on a port for some kind of behavior. And some callback that'll happen when it does. So think about this. This is exactly what we want from our server right now. We want it to wait to receive some information, and then once it does, we want it to make a get request to this xkcd endpoint and return the information. Let's handle the callback for what happens when we're listening on a port. We're just going to want to have like a console log, and it's going to say, a sample app listening at HTTP, localhost port. There we go. That's it. And then we want to define the get behavior. So we're creating a route over here. If we are getting to this particular endpoint, then have these options set up and do this thing. So right now what we're doing is we're setting up options. So we want to get and we want to handle the fetching of that endpoint. Request endpoint. Options, and then we're going to want to JSON this. Okay. So we are going to first set the port to 5000. Now this is going to be different from the port that our development server, our front-end development server is currently running on. Okay. And then we've created a route over here at the endpoint get data that will be able to access when somebody goes to http localhost :5000 / get data. And by setting up these CORS options over here, we're going to avoid any CORS issues that are happening on localhost. So basically, we're going to allow our requests from port 3000 to access our resources that are on port 5000. And now what we can do is we can run our Express server. So we will, let's go ahead and do that over here. Node server.js. All right. So let's see if it's working. What we'll do is, let's grab this window over here and let's look for port 5000, get data. Oh, oops, that's not HTTPS. Also not helpful. What's going on over here? So many windows open. Oh boy. Are you guys running into any issues over here? I'm wondering if the issue is, oops, I said node, but what I meant was server.js, not 5000. Server. Might have missed a step. 3000. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm going to give it a shot. Sosen. So at port 3000, that's where your development server is running. That's where your front end React app is running, and where we left it is we left it making a call to xkcd.com and receiving a CORS error. Separately from that, we've ostensibly spun up a server that is waiting and listening at port 5000 at the endpoint get data. And oh, maybe I need to save the file.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Can you stop the server, save it, and then run it up again?
Yeah, oh, here we go. So the issue that I was running into is I had like my Zoom toolbar blocking the, let me move this. I had my Zoom toolbar blocking that little dot over here that tells me whether I've saved it. So I couldn't see that it wasn't saved. And so what I needed to do was save it so that then I can run this command, and then it'll tell me this is exactly what I was expecting to see, which is the console log statement that, you know, the sample app is listening and it's ready to go. So this is telling me my server is ready and listening at this port, and now I can try to access this endpoint, and yes, we did it.
Hey.
So again, I want to make sure we're clear. We're actually running two servers right now. We've got a front-end development server on port 3000. We've got a back-end Express server on port 5000. and we set up a route to the get data endpoint. And so here we are, we're going to see the JSON that we've gotten back from xkcd. Okay, we are in good shape. So now let's go into our front end code. So here we are now back in the front end folder, and we want to make some changes so that instead of going to this REST API endpoint, we're going to this intermediary backend server, which is going to make that I'm going to make that API request for us, and we're going to avoid the CORS errors. So let's go to localhost 5000 get data. Someone's asking a really great question. When do we call render result? Right? Like you would expect to see something like render result, like so. But actually, because of the woo-woo magic of JSX, what we have instead is this like pseudo HTML element called render result looking element type thing, which is not actually an element. It is syntactic sugar for a function called react create element that then you give it an input type and you assign properties to it. This is where we would put, render result in here. But all of this has sort of been casually and mysteriously put into the background so that we can have the joy of just creating template like HTML like templates in our JavaScript. Are you missing? Okay, Express doesn't come. Okay, looks like you guys are answering some questions that are coming your way. So that's great. And Charles, does this answer your question? Okay, terrific. So we're going to go ahead and save this front end. And what we should expect is that when we go back into our React app, we should not run into that same issue again, that these CORS errors. So we can go ahead and refresh the page. Well, we certainly don't have CORS error, but we do have some other error over here. Looks like use layout effect might have been brought in somewhere.
Is that HTTPS for your localhost?
Oh, thank you. Eagle eyes. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, you're welcome. I was wrong about the await thing, so I had to make up for
it. We're fine. Everybody's on the same team here.
Good
I happen to be in the hot seat, but like we're all working through this together. Hey, look at what we did. We now avoided that CORS error because we routed our API call through this backend server that we created. Okay, so in the next part, we're going to now change out that REST API endpoint of xkcd. We're going to now make a call to a web database service called Kintone, and that'll bring us to our next portion over here. So, folks, we're gonna move into the segment about the web service, and we'll talk a little bit about Kintone first. So, just to make sure everybody is on the same page, Kintone is a no-code, low-code cloud platform for teams to easily share and collaborate on their data. So typically in a business operations context, you've got items that are in workflow, perhaps like expense reports or various types of maybe administrative items or like a sales CRM, or like marketing campaigns that need to get tracked. And the challenge with conventional tools like tracking those things in Excel or tracking them in Asana or tracking them in Slack, is that you've got data and the conversations about the data that are in different places. And where Kintone shines is in being able to have like one single place where you can collaborate on the day-to-day aspects of business operations. What's typically missing, is having these items in different places. So what we can do is we can take, sort of like all the information that would ordinarily be in files and all of the information that would ordinarily be in various messages, and we put them together so that we make teamwork better. So Kintone looks like you can so then what's possible is you can keep your data in one place. You can notify other people and have conversations about it all in one place. And that makes it easy to facilitate smooth and clean workflows, hiring processes, application tracking, any kind of legal document reviews. You can put them in a workflow so that the right people are seeing the right thing at the right time. They're notified accordingly. So for example, like an expense report can be submitted by the user and then approved by a manager before being sent to an accounting department. The main building block of Kintone is an app. You can imagine an app as like a table in a database or a spreadsheet in a workbook, only more powerful and with more flexibility. So what's great if you are an engineer is you can very, very quickly create apps with a drag and drop interface, no coding required, which means you can do this very, very quickly. If you're allergic to technology, you now have an opportunity to build stuff that you would have ordinarily relied on the IT teams to do or the engineers to do. Things that the engineers probably not worth their time. These tier 3 or tier 4 issues when, it's better worth your time to focus on tier 1 and tier 2 items. What's cool is as an engineer, these apps are very, very customizable. You can execute client-side JavaScript in them. And so what that does is if you are a developer, you can enhance the apps with JavaScript. If you're not a developer, you can build the apps that you need without a need for coding. And that ultimately is fulfilling the promise of groupware, being able to share meaningful insights about the data that become operationalized quickly. Now, what do I mean by groupware? I mean collaborative software that helps teams work better together wherever they are. So what does this have to do with you as a developer? So developers can contribute mainly in two ways. One is in helping build out Kintone as a command center. Imagine it as like a place where you want to land on and you want to see what's going on, like a more powerful version of Trello or Asana with all the data in one place. You've got like a layer above the data layer, like a collaboration layer with comments and process management and ways to keep things moving smoothly. For you to then integrate with other third-party tools and pipe the data into here. Now, for that piping to happen, developers can be there to build out that integration. And then enhancements, you can imagine building customizing the subdomain, customizing the environment to fit your specific needs, or even building packages out and then wrapping them in a configuration window that allows non-technical users to enhance their capabilities with like a plug-and-play packaging, like a Chrome extension. Inside of Kintone, we've got various tools to make it easy for engineers and developers to build stuff. We've got an open JavaScript API, an open REST API. You've got API tokens that you can use to securely interact with those APIs. Webhooks that allow you to kick off payloads inside when actions trigger inside of the Kintone GUI and push them to various other services. We've got plugins, which you can imagine as custom JavaScript extensions that non-technical users can configure without needing to code, like a Chrome extension. And then again, being able to run client-side JavaScript, being able to customize CSS and HTML, and having very precise and granular permission controls. So with that kind of custom look and feel, you can literally do so many things inside of Kintone, making custom graphs and charts, or even Will did a really cool demo of blowing up Space Invaders inside of Kintone. You can do that too. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you're looking for more opportunities to learn, you can play with Kintone to learn new JavaScript tricks, contribute to tech blogs, to position yourself as a thought leader, share your projects with the community. If you're looking for alternative revenue streams, you can create and sell Kintone extensions. You can consult with firms on achieving business goals and build stuff for them very, very quickly that would have otherwise been out of reach for them. And you can also develop Kintone customizations for customers. So with that in mind, let's go back to the live coding. So the first thing that you want to do, if you haven't done so already, is log into your Kintone subdomain. And when you do, you'll see an environment that looks very similar to this. Now, I'm going to go ahead and create a sample app. You can follow along with me, or you can create your own app. Either one's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create an app from an existing template. And I'm looking for the employee onboarding template. And I'm going to add that app. This is a convenient template to add because it comes with data that's already baked in it. You create your own app, you'll need to either import a CSV or to like populate with data, or just start spinning up records manually. But if you're using, if you're just looking for any kind of sample data, you can go into the, and I'll show this again. You'll click on the plus sign over here in this apps pane. And then where it says Kintone Marketplace, you can type in onboarding, and then you can click on add this app to add employee onboarding. Once you do, you'll be taken to this page. And like I said, an app is like a table in a database or a spreadsheet in a workbook, only with more power and flexibility. Here we've got various different views, like filtered lists that I can select from. I've got different graphs and charts that I can use. I can drill down into specific records, where I can see the values in the record, and then I can also tag other people as well as track changes. So this is very simple and straightforward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an API token with this app so that I can begin to access it programmatically. And I went into the settings. So what I did is I'm going to click on this gear wheel here on the right-hand side. So with a white background, okay, click on this gear wheel. And I'm taken to a page that's got 4 tabs on it: form, views, graphs, and app settings. I will click on app settings. And then what I want to do is I'm going to go into the second column, third item down is API token. I'll generate an API token, and I want permission to view records. That's all. I'll click save. I'm going to regret doing that because I actually am going to need to copy and paste that long API token. There we go. Now I copy that token. Now I click save. Now I click update app. So the difference between saving and updating the app is almost like the difference between saving and staging and pushing to production. When I click update app, I'm pushing to production. And now I can use that API token. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to go back into Server.js. We're going to make a change over here to the REST API endpoint. This time we're going to make a call to Kintone. And so we're going to make a few changes. We'll go to your Kintone environment, which your subdomain will have a different name than the one that I'm using. I'm using one called dev events, and then it'll be Kintone /k/v1 /records.json. And we're going to want to what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a query parameter at the end to uniquely identify our app. Your app ID is located, you'll have your subdomain over here, and then it'll have k / and then a number. Your number will almost certainly be 1. Mine is 26 because this is the 26th unique. This is the 26th app that's been created in the subdomain, but you'll use your number. I'll use the number 26. And what we're going to do, and looks like Will is dropping in the chat the API docs that we're going to be using over here. So we've added this query string. What we're going to change right now are the, oh, oops, looks like, silly me, I have been accidentally working in the index.js area, and we actually want to be working in our express on our server side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, roll back these changes. There we go. And then save this, go into my server. This is what I wanted. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace that xkcd with that URL, and we're going to want to add fetch options. And what we're going to want to add over here is our authorization header. Okay, so let's add some headers. The header we're going to add is called xkcd-api-token, and it's going to be the value of that API token. Yours will look different than mine. Now, you might be wondering, well, is it okay that I'm, putting in this API token? This is sensitive information. And, you definitely don't want to have this on your front end. If you're publishing any kind of code to a public repository like GitHub, for example, you definitely don't want to add this API token. So it's critical that any kind of public exposure that this gets protected. You don't need to worry about my token. I'm going to end up reloading it later. But let's at this point stop the node server. And we'll hit Control C, and then we've saved the file. We'll run this again, and let's reload the React app, and let's see how we do. Okay. Well, this is a Kintone app, and it's got a whole bunch of records in it. And what we just did is we pulled a bunch of records from Kintone. Heck yeah, we did it. So far, so good. So now the next step that we want to take is we want to protect that API token. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to npm install in backend. We're going to npm install .env. An env file is like it's a file that we use to store sensitive information, and then we can make sure that we git ignore that file so it doesn't get pushed up into a public repository, into a public GitHub repository. And at the same time, we can take advantage of certain processes that exist in Node to basically treat that sensitive information as an environmental variable that gets automatically injected at the right time. And so once we've npm installed .env, we're going to want to require it in our code. So here I am inside of server.js, and we will actually just say require .env config. So some boilerplate to make sure that the .env works. And then we create a .env file in backend, which you'll see I've already done. And then you'll add your API token over here. Oh, looks like I'm going to need to grab it from here. And what I'm going to do is in that place in server.js where I previously exposed that information, I'm going to now hook into a node method called process.env, and then I've got API token, which it'll recognize, and it'll inject this value right over here, except not as a string. There we go. What we're going to do now is we will restart the Express server. Looks like everything's set up over there and it's listening. And reopening everything. Have a freeze. Okay, no problem, Fabrice. Join us when you're ready. So at the end of the day, we've got this server-side code that created a route to get data. It's listening on port 5000. It's if it receives a request at this endpoint that is a GET request, it's going to send its own GET request to Kintone. It's going to include a hidden API token in the header, and then we should be able to present that in a React app. So let's go ahead and we will refresh this. We're now loading. Boom. We did it. All right, everybody, pat yourself on the back. Give yourself a round of applause. If you've made it this far, you're in terrific shape. That was a lot. That was a lot that we did. Congratulations. I'm going to take a moment to summarize what we did before I open the floor up to questions. So we did 4 things today. We built a front-end React project, simple. Just an element, and then we called an API and outputted it to React. And then we encountered CORS errors. And so then we set up an Express server to handle those CORS errors. And then ultimately we hooked up that API call to Kintone to get information and then present it, render it in React. So what could you do next? You could play with the rendering of the response so that you are rendering tables. This is like a React front-end project or a React front-end feature to play with. You could make post requests to add data into Kintone. That would be like more back-end. You can try calling a public API from this great list. Terrific public API list. You could deploy your app to Heroku so others can see it, and that'll give you some practice with DevOps. And you can share your experience on dev.to. If you're stuck, if you want answers to your questions, you can. This is just in general. This is outside of our time here today. I encourage you to share your code on the Kintone developer community forum or on Stack Overflow, where you can expect, like answers to your questions within 24 hours or so, if not quicker. And at this point, we're going to open it up to questions. So I see we've got a question coming in from Kaling. Could you show what it looks like in the HTTP request? Could you show what the token looks like? Sure. So here we are. The HTTP request. So this is the endpoint that the server is making, is calling. It's calling this endpoint. This will be your subdomain, and your app ID. This will be a different number. Everything else will be boilerplate over here. We're accessing an endpoint that allows us to get records. Okay. The actual request itself, in addition to this endpoint, we need to indicate that it is a GET request and that we're passing along headers. The header that we're passing along is the x-cybozu-api-token header, and it's over here that you will put your API token in. Now, we did a little step over here with that .env file so that we're protecting our sensitive information. And so we've npm installed .env to hook into that node process.env method and created that API token property on it. Charles is so that's that. And then if you see token does not match error, you need to save the app changes in Kintone. Yes, that's right. Please make sure that you're not just saving you got to generate an API token. Make sure that view records is checked. By the way, if you're going to be posting information into Kintone, you want to also make sure that add records is checked. Then you'll save that page, and then you want to make sure that you're pushing from development into production. And so you're going to hit that blue update app button at the top right corner of the screen. I'll open it up for, I'll invite, if you've got any questions, we definitely want to make sure that everybody is getting the answers to their questions. So you can feel free to throw whatever questions you want our way. How's everybody doing so far? You can use your reactions in Zoom to share. Hey, this is slow, fast, good, check. So go ahead and just throw up whatever icon, whatever reaction you've got to where we are now. We've got 3 thumbs ups. Cool. We've got a celebratory hat thing. Great. Great. Okay. I'm still at just entered my token in Server.JS. No problem. Charles, you're getting fetch error, invalid JSON response. Let me show you our code. So this is what we're seeing. You can have make this just a little bit smaller. No problem. I'm still at just entered my token in Server.js. No problem. Looking for API token. No problem. Got a fetch error when I misspelled. Yeah, that'll do it. Those typos, they'll get you. It's records.json _app, and then this is your app ID.
Yeah, there's also another API endpoint called record.json without the S. We're using the one with the S.
That one always gets me.
That's right.
It gets
and
people,
also make sure your subdomain, make sure that it is not our demo dev events. Instead, it is your unique subdomain.
And don't leave the curly braces inside the URL. And then we're being
Why
asked
are
a
you
quick.
using
Yeah, sorry.
line 31, the tile quote? Oh, that's a great question. So one of my favorite things about ES6 is that you can inject variables into your strings now. They're called template strings. And the way that you do that is by using that backtick instead of a regular, like a single quote or a double quote. And then you use this this placeholder. It's $, and then open curly bracket, then the name of your variable, and then close curly bracket, like what you see I did over here and over here and over here. And then that will pull in the value of these variables into your string. So really what I should be doing is, const your subdomain equals, for me it's dev events, my const your app ID, for me it'll be the number 26. So that's what those backticks do. Very, very cool feature that got rolled out with ES6. Quick recap on .env part, please. Sure. So .env, basically, sometimes you've got sensitive information, and you want to make sure that that sensitive information does not get pushed to a public location, a public repository like GitHub, or like a client side executable code. Those are big no-nos for sensitive information. So we need a way to sort of inject sensitive information in a way that's not publicly facing, and that's what .env does. .env is a node module that you can install, and you'll create a .env file. It looks just like this. And what you'll do is it's basically, this file is just a list of like key value pairs. And then what you're doing is you're hooking into Node's existing process.env method, which injects environmental variables at the right time. And you're going to reference the key that you created. In this case, it's API underscore token. And then Node will inject the value of that key into this statement at just the right time. And what you also do is then you make sure that this .env file is included in your git ignore. See .env. Actually, we should add .env over here to your git ignore, so that it will not automatically get pushed into GitHub. Next question, can you show the screen where the API token lists for the database? Absolutely. Here we are. Here we are in Kintone, and what you'll do is you'll click on this gear wheel, Crystal, you'll click on this gear wheel, and you've got 4 tabs over here. You'll click on app settings, and then you're going to go to the second column, the middle column, third item down, API token. You'll click generate, you'll generate an API token. You'll make sure that it's got view record permissions. You'll save it, okay? Once you hit save, you're not done. You have to take this next step of updating the app. And once you update the app, now you've got a live API token that you can then use in your code. It's an excellent question, Crystal. Thanks for asking it. I'm sure you're not the only one who got stuck over there. Adding data into Kintone using post requests, we just need to enable it for adding and app setting. That's right. Yeah, so if you wanted to create a post request, you'll go and you'll follow these steps. You'll go into app settings, middle column, API token. And then you can either generate a new API token, or you can add record permissions. You'll add record permissions to the existing API token, and then save it, and then update the app. Correct.
Yeah, so just some additional information on that. We are actually going to go through adding, we're posting, Kintone data from our React application in our next workshop. And just as a heads up, you'll need to add a new routing inside your express.js. So at the moment, we only have one routing, which receives a GET request. We're going to add another one which receives a POST request. You also need to make some modifications in your React app. So you post some data with a body inside, and you'll have to receive that on the Express side. You'll have to fiddle around with the received body. And you'll be using a new API as well. So we're just using a get records API at the moment. We'll be using a add records API, which requires different parameters. It also requires some bodies and all that. Yes, so quite a lot inside that as well. And an additional note, when you're adding data into Kintone, you'll in the body you'll want to include what fields you want to add data into. And each field inside your application actually has what we call a field code, which is like a unique identifier. So we'll be meddling around with those. We have like default field codes at the moment put in there, but we'll be sort of editing those, updating those so that we can understand what they are. Yeah, so that will be included in our next workshop.
Just want to say thanks everyone for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the workshop. So I just want to thank HackBuddy by JavaScript LA for sponsoring this event. And we do have future workshops, so please join us. The bit.ly is right there on your screen, so you can see what next workshops we have, and you can join our next one on May 20th. And lastly, we want to thank you all for joining again.